You guys at the Epoch Times, you're oftentimes trying to warn the world of, the dangers of these highly ideological totalitarian regimes. Do you think your Polish ancestry and the struggles of Poland against totalitarianism is in some way informed your worldview?
I mean, 100%, right? I mean, I grew up with learning about these stories. Here's the thing that I've realized, okay? And this I realized some years ago, but it's incredibly difficult for someone who does not grow up in a authoritarian or totalitarian society, and there's a distinction, we can discuss that as well, but to understand what it's like to be in an authoritarian. You just don't get it. If you're in a free society like we have been for quite some time here and in Canada, you don't think to yourself, I have to censor what I'm saying. I don't think, well, Peter is clearly, someone is asking Peter to report on me, right? So I have to edit what I say, and if maybe I trust Peter a bit, so I have to speak in a little bit of code. Maybe I can get some code back to see if we're really on the same team or not. And it just completely, when in Poland, when they had this process, lustracja, right, after communism fell, where they said, we're going to let the dossiers, in communist societies, everyone has a dossier. Like the system, the state security has a file on you, on every person, right? And or on many, many, many people, right? So you could go out and see your file, right? This was part of their sort of trying to get out of communism, right? And people discovered, this is a very Catholic country, pretty much, most people went to church, to confession. All these priests were reporting on what people were confessing to the state security. Wives were reporting on husbands, and you can even imagine scenarios, right, where, state security invites a wife in, they're interested in the husband, and they're like, look, my associate over there, he's hanging out with your kids right now. I'd like to know what you have to say about your husband. So what do you do, right? What do you say when you know that these guys have got your kids? They might do something bad. Now you have to report on your husband. And this is, I'll just mention this, right? This is actually how this system works. These communist totalitarian systems work. They function to try to compromise your moral high ground, right? So it's always these types of situations like I just described. There's no win situation. Either you betray your husband, or you betray or you're forced to, maybe some harm will come to your kids. What do you do? Well, whatever you do, in the end, you're somehow diminished afterwards. And this is through these years that I've been studying the system and so forth. This is a kind of, it's not as they say, it's a feature, not a bug, right, of how the system works, because you can control a population which doesn't feel like it has a moral high ground largely is much easier to control. No, and then, at the University of Alberta, there was a postdoc whose mother had just come over from China, and this woman had been tortured in terrible ways. Terrible, terrible ways. And why? Because she refused to sign a piece of paper that said, I renounce Falun Gong. Can you imagine? They tortured this woman to try to get her to sign a piece of paper. And if she had just signed this piece of paper, she could walk away. And this just blew my mind, because in a civilized free society, what is that? That's not, there's no justice in that. And everything I had been hearing from my mom and my father and just over the years, I just crystallized from it. My God, this is, I get what's happening here.
Do you remember this document that we saw the other day about the COVID Community Corps?
Yeah. April 1st, 2021 is a White House, Department of Health and Human Services initiative to funnel a massive amount of money, over $13 billion, to organizations to push vaccination. So it's a government bribe to push COVID-19 vaccination. And the money went to the American College of Pediatrics. Before the vaccines were even approved for children, it went to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology to push vaccines on pregnant women. It went to virtually every church, every community, Hispanic and Black groups. It went to the NFL and sports teams, went to Hollywood and entertainment. This is a government program. People have been in this current controversy have been basically vilifying the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, it's big pharma. It's big pharma. They're doing the dastardly deed. Well, wait a minute. This is in the open. This is the U.S. government and pharma combined in their power of pushing products on the country.
And there is this sort of tight coordination around messaging of government, big pharma, and big tech around all sorts of things related to COVID, especially this mass vaccination. Without, just sort of as if everybody, and the really weird thing when you look at these emails, that conversations between people from these different, parts of society, it's like they're all, this is what struck me, okay? They seem like they're all assumed to be on the same team.
Oh, there's a great example of that.
It's fascinating, right? Like, it's just, you would expect there'd be debate about these crazy society-changing things, right? But it's not. It's like they're all like, yeah, of course we're going to do this.
Well, how could the message be the same phrase? So in the summer of 2021, it was on the news in every station, every news station, every late-night talk show. It came out simultaneously, crisis of the unvaccinated. And everyone parroted that word. I was on Fox News that week, and we showed a montage. Even Ron DeSantis said, we have a crisis of the unvaccinated. Everyone used the same phrase. This has happened multiple times now, where it's almost the propaganda technique, John, is flood the zone, right? So a message is crafted, and somehow it gets out, and simultaneously the zone is flooded.
This was kind of the Kissinger doctrine, okay? Back in, I think it was 2007 or 2009, Thomas Friedman, remember in the New York Times, he wrote an op-ed. It made me crazy. He wrote that we should adopt Chinese governance practices here in America. That was, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was wild stuff. And I knew at this time I had already done some of the original early reporting on forced organ harvesting, on this murder for organs industry, right, in China. It's like, no, this is not. We do not want to adopt those governance practices. This is like the worst, right? But somehow people would kind of gloss over these, obvious crimes against humanity and not want to know about it. And then there's this other element, right, in these, just as human beings, we don't want to believe. And I still find this today as I learn about the next terrible thing that I didn't know about, that I just don't want to believe that human beings are capable of doing such things. So in North Korea, if you are found out to be a dissident, the entire family goes into a concentration camp and lives there for several generations. Okay, that's the punishment, right? So this guy actually was born in one of these concentration camps. His mother did something untoward, and he just told them, look, she did this untoward, and they shot her in the head in front of him. That's what he lived through. Eventually, he kind of saw through this escape. I mean, it's almost impossible to escape, right? But there are these people that have done it. An unbelievable story of Yeonmi Park, who I had on American Thought Leaders. I mean, it's worth that's an amazing book to read about North Korea. But the point is that, no, some people are so deeply conditioned, so deeply believe in these systems that they would lament exactly like you described. They absolutely mean it, and they would just point out their mother for doing the wrong thing. And I mean, there's no closer bond, right? Is there in humanity than the mother-child bond, right? And no problem. So that's the power of this indoctrination or mass formation. I don't know. I'm just trying to kind of understand how well this works, frankly. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's deeply disturbing.
So in Matthias Desmet, his book, The Psychology of Totalitarianism, what he writes about, this, in a sense, this trance, this mental state that occurs, in your independent assessment and reporting, do you see elements of truth in what he's saying?
Oh, no, I recommend this book to people these days.
I do the same. The reason why I wrote one of the inside cover comments is I see this behavior now in my colleagues, doctors, particularly around COVID. And the two aspects of COVID, the failure to treat it early and also the vaccines. I see it in them. My friends who I knew for decades now, I see almost a blank stare. I see almost this willingness to say, listen, it's over with. Any type of friendship that we had in the past, it's over with. We're not communicating anymore. There is now, there's a new normal. There is a team of of promoting fear, suffering, hospitalization, and death, non-treatment, horrible things going on in the hospital. And there is a clear agenda to promote these vaccines.